Hello, dear students. Welcome to the virtual class for the paper Film Studies, which is being taught in the fourth semester of the MA course in Journalism and Mass Communication at the Central University of Odisha. I am your course instructor, Dr. Sourav Gupta, and today in this video lecture I will be discussing the very important filmmakers of India. To be more specific, I will be discussing the work of eminent filmmakers of post-colonial Indian cinema. The lecture is at a very elementary level. This will give you a basic idea of what the filmmakers after the independence were trying to do. As you know that traditionally Kolkata was the capital of British India, and Kolkata being a very important business center of Eastern India also became the cultural hub of the country, along with Mumbai. So, like all other arts and entertainment, theatre had flourished in Kolkata and Mumbai, and the practice of theatre gave way to cinema. Madden Company, which was owned by Mr. J. Madden, was one of the most important persons who was into the business of commercial theatre, and they had set up the Madden theatres in various cities of India, including Kolkata. And later on, they developed the Madden Studios, and there were other studios also in Kolkata where films were being produced not only in Bangla but also in Hindi, South Indian languages, and other regional languages. So, it gave rise to very eminent directors, some of whom went abroad to study the art of filmmaking, and when they returned, they worked in the studios in Kolkata as well as in Mumbai, and went on to become very well-known directors and made a mark for themselves not only in regional cinema but also in national mainstream Hindi cinema as well. And they gave shape to the industry, the film industry, the Indian film industry, which today is known to the entire world as Bollywood. So it won't be possible to discuss all the directors in one go, but I would like to discuss about Bimal Roy first. Bimal Roy had his training abroad. He was a very well-trained editor, and when he came back to India, he started directing films. And many members of his unit later on went on to become good directors. One of the notable among them is Rishikesh Mukherjee, who was an assistant director to Mr. Bimal Roy, and who himself later became a very eminent director. Bimal Roy is a very important director in the history of Bollywood cinema. Because before Roy came, the content of the Hindi films were basically of two types: historical and mythological. The reason is there was always this impact of theatre on the films, and theatre was also being made on historical and mythological stories. It was the theatre artists who used to act in the films, and basically that legacy of theatre continued in the films. But when Roy came, with his foreign training and modern approach, he changed the entire way of filmmaking in India. One of his eminent works is Do Bigha Zameen. It was based on a poem by Gurudev Kavi Ravindranath Tagore. And it was a milestone, a departure, because Roy was treating a poem. This was never done before. He was transcreating a poem into a film. So he also started showing how scripts should be made, how screenplays should be written, how literature should be adapted to cinema. And I would also like to mention is the choice of the literature. Do Bigha Zameen is a story where a very simple person who had a small piece of land was exploited by a big, rich, greedy man, and his small piece of land was taken away. So there was a Marxian angle, a pro-people angle to this plot, and which Bimal Roy, and this was the first time when the Indian films were not talking about deities, gods and goddesses and super villains like Asuras, or say historical heroes like Rana Pratap, etc. Rather, it was focusing on the plight of common man. Land problem is a very common problem in countries like India. Exploitation of the poor by the rich is also a very common problem in our country. But this was the first time when cinema as an art medium was reflecting the plight of the common man. So Do Bigha Zameen and Bimal Roy created a history by taking up this story. Later on, Bimal Roy also made some very big commercial hits, and very notable among them is the film Madhumathi. Madhumathi is a musical blockbuster which featured Dilip Kumar and Vaijayanti Mala, and it also introduced Salil Chaudhary as the music director. And Madhumathi is a film which gave a legendary status to Lata Mangeshkar as a playback singer. The songs of the film were super hits. Even today they are very popular. Songs like Dil Tadap Tadap Ke Kehta Hai, then Toote Hue Khwabon Ne. Also picturization of songs. That was also something which was very novel in Madhumathi. The entire plot and the treatment of the film was very, very Western in nature. The acting was very realistic. Talking about acting, there was a huge influence of theatre and drama in the acting of the Hindi films those days. Melodrama was there. But in Madhumathi, we will see that the acting is very cinematic, very normal and realistic. So Bimal Roy can also be hailed as the pioneer of realism in Indian cinema. He was a first-class editor, and he also introduced seamless editing. If you see the films, even after so many years, you won't get any visual jerk. It was so seamless editing. And he, in fact, set the standards for editing of films. There was Sujata and Bandini in the later years, which were also very well appreciated films. Well appreciated for their content, the treatment, and the music. In Bandini, it's a story where it deals with the relationship of a brother and a sister, moving away from the conventional love story. So again, it's a very new experiment. So that is about Bimal Roy. I would advise all of you to kindly see his films, Do Bigha Zameen, Madhumathi, Sujata and Bandini. During this time, I would also like to mention Mr. V. Shantaram, who was an eminent director of that period. And he directed quite a few films, but Do Aakhe Barahat is a very important film, landmark film. Landmark for the fact that this film portrayed the rural India, the problems prevailing in the villages of India, and the problems faced by the common people of our country. So, after the independence, as India was emerging as a new country, there was a tendency, a trend among the new generation film directors to experiment with new subjects, and the technical aspects were also undergoing a lot of changes, and Indian cinema was becoming professional, more competent. But the turning point, the main thrust in quality filmmaking did not come from Bollywood or Mumbai, but it came from regional cinema. And again, we have to return to Kolkata. Jean Renoir, the famous French film director, was shooting for his film The River, and he came to Kolkata. A part of his shooting was scheduled in Kolkata. And when he came to Kolkata, he was assisted by some of the people who were of the Kolkata film industry. And a young person who was extremely interested into films but was professionally into advertising accompanied Renoir for all those days and learned the art of filmmaking hands-on. And after Renoir left, that young person, he set up the Film Society movement in Kolkata. He and some other film enthusiasts. The Film Society movement was extremely important because through the Film Society, new films from all over the world were brought to Kolkata and screened. They were analyzed and criticized and discoursed. So they were getting exposed to world cinema, to all the new experiments which were taking place. The young person who was inspired by Renoir made his first film in the year 1954. The person in question is none other than Satyajit Ray, and his first film was Pather Panchali, an adaptation from the novel by the same name written by Vibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay. Pather Panchali was a landmark in Indian cinema for various reasons. I'll discuss very elementary features of Pather Panchali, which again will give you an idea of the filmmaking style of Ray. Pather Panchali again is a landmark because it showed us how a filmmaker should adapt literature, how a story or a novel should be transformed into celluloid, into a cinema, because these two are different medium. The plot, when it is written as a novel, it's a different medium, it's a reader's medium. And when we see on the screen, it's a film, it's a different language, its treatment is different. So Satyajit Ray showed us Pather Panchali is almost a filmmaker's manual, where we not only see the film but we learn how a film should be made. And Pather Panchali dealt with rural India. It showed how India looks like. India is all about its villages. India lies in its villages. We cannot make an idea of India by simply seeing its cities. It is the villages that makes India. It is the rural life, rural lifestyle, rural people, rural occupations, rural problems. And Satyajit Ray, for the first time in Indian cinema, he showed the expertise which was needed to shoot in outdoors. The studio system was going on, and most of the shootings in Indian films were done inside, indoors. Putting up scenes. Most of the times, scenes that were painted for theatre were put up. But Satyajit Ray started outdoor shooting, and he explored the wide range of shots and movements which can be operated through a movie camera. The magic of the camera, the language of the camera was explored in different dimensions, and Pather Panchali presented a totally different kind of a cinema which India had never watched. And it was extremely well appreciated all over the world, and it set new standards in filmmaking. At the beginning it was not received very well, but after it won prizes, internationally recognized, it was re-released and people lined up to see Pather Panchali. This was the first film of a trilogy which came to be known as Opu trilogy. Two more films after Pather Panchali, Aparajito and Opur Sangsar. So Opu was the little boy who grew up, and his entire life story was filmed in 3 pieces. So Opu trilogy, that makes up. Pather Panchali was, as I said, that it showed us a new dimension. It gave a new dimension of how to make a film. So there were different kind of interpretations. A filmmaker, the director, for the first time the director asserted himself. In a cinema, the actors and everybody else are merely puppets in the hands of the directors. It is the director who is the captain of the ship, and he envisages how the film will look like, how the audience will see it. So, this role of the director was very aptly portrayed by Satyajit Ray in Pather Panchali. Here, I would like to give you one example. There is a famous scene in Pather Panchali which is known as the train scene. A train is traveling through the village where these two little children live, who are the protagonists of Pather Panchali, the brother sister, Durga, the elder sister, and his younger brother, Oppu. So both of them, they were playing in the field, and suddenly the train comes, and they are mesmerized. This is a famous scene because it was not easy to capture a running train in those days with so limited means. So first I will try to show you the film and the little clipping, and then we'll talk about it. We'll continue the class. So here is the I hope you have enjoyed the train scene from Pather Panchali. So, this kind of filmmaking also gave rise to a serious film criticism. People started getting material for discourse in this kind of filmmaking. Many people interpreted that the train is a symbol of the Nehruvian development that was taking place in India during that time. It was 1950s, early 1950s, and the country was just had been independent, and the first general elections, the planning commission was being set up. So the train was basically a symbol that plenty was happening. Many developmental activities was going on in the country. Then there was a scene where you must have seen the white flowers through which the brothers sisters was running. that is the Kash flower, which normally appears before the Durga Puja during the month of October. So this was again a way of showing the landscape and nature of Bengal, and also the audience could understand through the Kash that what time of the year it was. So Ray was trying to explore a new language of cinema. He went on to make many more films. The Calcutta trilogy, where he was dealing with middle class mentalities, the changing society, urban society. Then he was adapting continuously from literature. Ray had adapted many films from Tagore. One of his famous adaptations is Charulata, which he adapted from Noshto Nir, a very famous novel by Tagore. Also Ghore Baire, again by Tagore. So he was constantly showing how to adapt literature. Ray is a complete encyclopedia of filmmaking. If you see all his films, it's a total encyclopedia of filmmaking, just like Johan Cruyff's Total Football. There is no area in filmmaking which Ray has not explored. Starting from the language of the camera, to edit cuts, to acting, to use of background music, use of songs, choreography, political treatment, and so on. So I would also discuss Ray's films when I discuss language of camera, semiotics, symbolism in cinema, film appreciation and criticism. There I'll discuss other films of Ray's. So I would request all of you to see Opu trilogy, the Calcutta trilogy, and also Ghore Baire, Charulata, Ganoshatru, and so on. Next, I would like to mention again about Mrinal Sen, another filmmaker based in Kolkata. Mrinal Sen was a very different filmmaker from Ray. He had his own unique style, and he was a filmmaker who was always experimenting. He did not have any one fixed style. He always experimented. In the 1960s, Mrinal Sen made Bhuvan Shom, a film which was sponsored by the Government of India, the National Film Development Corporation, and this film is considered to be the starting point of something which came to be known as the art film movement in India, or the parallel films. Bhuvan Shom was in Hindi, and it showed the mundane life of a bureaucrat, a retired bureaucrat, and suddenly how a village girl changes the entire perception of the bureaucrat in one day. So again, it's a new kind of a thought and new style of filmmaking, and this inspired the many other filmmakers like Mani Kaul, Shyam Benegal, M.S. Satyu, Adur Gopalakrishnan, and an entire new genre of filmmaking started in India, which came to be known as parallel films or art films. These were low budget films and government sponsored in many times. So Mrinal Sen started his filmmaking career with the film Akash Kushum, Baishe Srabon, but he is again famous for his Calcutta trilogy. Yes, like Ray, he also made a Calcutta trilogy. Chorus, Interview, Kolkata 71. These are the three films which makes up Mrinal Sen's Calcutta trilogy. Mrinal Sen never shied away from politics. He made political films, and he said that he is political director. He's a leftist, and his films backed up leftist ideas. During the late 60s and 70s, India, especially Bengal, witnessed the rise of extreme left Nakshal movement, and Calcutta became the hotbed of turbulence. The police, the government wanted to curb the Naxals, and the police was on a rampage. They were hunting down and killing young men who were alleged Naxals. So this 1969 to 71, these 3 years were extremely turbulent. And Mrinal Sen wanted to capture the turbulence in the minds of the people, especially the young generation, who, due to unemployment, due to the social problems existing, due to the exploitations, due to the class exploitation, became very frustrated, and they wanted to revolt, they wanted to protest. And maybe Naxalism provided them an avenue to do that. So Mrinal Sen wanted to portray the feelings of the young generation through his Calcutta trilogy. Chorus 1971, Calcutta 71 and Interview. And in these films, Mrinal Sen was extremely unconventional in his treatment, especially when it came to the language of the camera. Mrinal Sen experimented with the camera. There were scenes where the camera was held in hand. It was not mounted on a stand, but it was held in hand and it was shaking, giving rise to very disturbed images. So these were the kind of